Hello everybody, welcome back to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be talking about phase number 3 of the Manchester Major, the finals, starting with the quarterfinals, the semifinals, and concluding with the grand finals. So 7 matches to talk about today. Let's get into it. Starting with Secret versus BDS. We saw four quarterfinals. 3 of them were regional matchups. Unfortunately, we saw Europe versus Europe, North America versus North America, and Brazil versus Brazil. Fortunately, that did set up some non-regional matchups, 2 different regions playing in the semis and then the grand final. And because of the way the bracket was set up, that was almost guaranteed. We could have technically seen NA versus NA in the grand final, but because of what happened in the semis, that didn't quite happen. Anyways, talking about Secret versus BDS, 2 European teams. BDS take Secret down pretty handily, but I think this was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people given the performance of each of these teams within Swiss. Secret, they went 3-0 in series, they went 4-0 in maps, whereas BDS just scraped in. They almost got eliminated by Cyclops, they just barely hung on, and yeah, they went 3-2 overall, playing twice as many maps. So maybe stamina would be a factor, maybe the abundance of information Secret had on BDS would be a factor, but the experience was certainly in the court of BDS. And also, to be said of playing a bunch of maps, it does certainly help you. BDS, as this 5-man, is a new team. It probably did help them to some extent playing all those maps, getting warmed up, getting more accustomed to each other, into the meta, etc. And I did have a little bit of a suspicion that the lights would be a bit too bright for Secret when they made it to top 8. And I think it was partially that and partially BDS really waking up, because they just looked really, really good up until the grand final. And they still look pretty good, but again, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Okay, so 7-5 on Chalet, 7-4 on Bank. No overtime required, just a pretty clean 2-0. Secret did keep it pretty close in each map, but it did go BDS's way pretty handily. And yeah, the social prediction, the community prediction was heavily in favor of BDS, but I don't know if this necessarily reflected... I think this was maybe a little biased is what I'm trying to say. By the numbers, Secret were the better team, but I do think there were a lot of reasons to go with BDS here. And yeah, Groovy does okay going 19-19, everybody else not so good on Secret, whereas Likafak, Usis are the big stars of the show on BDS, as they were for pretty much the entire major before this point. And beyond this point, those were the 2 best players, I'd say. Shaiko not shining nearly as bright as he did on the previous iteration of BDS, where he was very much intended to be the star of the show. So, I mean, if other players can pick up the slack, that's great, but if that's not the case, hopefully Shaiko will be able to regain his god status. How else are you gonna put it? Okay, we'll talk about BDS again soon, because they have a semi-final to talk about. And Furia versus Liquid next up. I don't know if these aren't necessarily in order. This is just the order CGG had them in, so I'm just going to talk about them in this order. Right, this felt like not a free win for Furia, but I don't think very many people went with Liquid. Let's look at the social prediction. Actually closer than the previous one. I think that's to do with Liquid is just a pretty popular org. Secret not necessarily, like they're much less popular than BDS, whereas Liquid is just an extremely popular org. I think these community polls are a lot to do with the popularity of the team, not always with the skill of the team, although that is clearly a factor. We see some close maps though. 7-5 victory for Liquid on Cafe, and then just barely Furia come back. It looks like Liquid, it's going to be another choke. We've seen them choke countless times, and they had a lead. What was the lead? Let's actually go back and look. Liquid goes up. It's 2-4 actually in favor of Furia, 2-5 even, but then Liquid. And so they're up on match point. But then Furia wins a round, and then Liquid wins another round. So they didn't have a massive advantage, like they weren't up 6-2 or anything, but they were up 6-5, they're up 7-6. They had multiple match point opportunities, 3 of them throughout the game, and they just couldn't close it out. And yeah, Furia gets those last 2 rounds, but then dominant showing by Liquid on Chalet. A lot of people were talking about no way Liquid's going to beat Furia on Chalet, but Liquid maybe deceptively good on Chalet. They actually had a pretty good record on the map coming into this, and yeah, they take down Furia, ending the dynasty, ending the streak. Furia, formerly W7M, had won the last 2 majors as well as the most recent SI. This was their 4th title they were looking for in a row, and they are finally denied it. Maybe the complacency caught up with them, maybe the meta no longer favored them, maybe Liquid was just really, really good on the day. Whatever the case, the streak is over. And yeah, KZ and Felipox do well here, but 3 players on Furia all doing very badly, especially Herds, almost double negative. Uncharacteristic of this roster to have this many players doing this badly. It's usually like 1 or 2. They usually have 3 or 4 of their players firing on all cylinders, but they couldn't muster up the strength in this one. Palu resets and Maya the stars for Liquid. And moving into the third one, FaZe Clan versus Beast Coast. And this is another one where it was very much expected for FaZe to beat Beast Coast. Beast Coast was a pretty massive underdog coming into this one, as they have been for their entire existence at this point. And you know we'll be talking about them more later, but let's talk about this matchup. It's a smoke show. Only 5 rounds won by FaZe on Nighthaven Labs, the map where they choked the SI Grand Final against W7M. They lose 7-4 and then destroyed on Cafe 7-1 in favor of Beast Coast. Gunner in particular had some magnificent rounds. This could have been a much closer game, but no, they were able to shut the door convincingly and surprisingly. Gunner 28-8, 4-1. Insane performance, like just next level stuff by Gunner. As you can see, nobody else really that impressive on Beast Coast. I guess 16-11 by Gaveni is fine, but he went 0-4 on entry. It really was the Gunner show here. And Handy and Cyber doing fine, but everybody else getting smoked over on the side of FaZe. And final quarterfinal game, we have Dark Zero versus M80 and NA versus NA. Dark Zero was, I think, the favorite by most accounts coming into this. The poll is actually 50-50. I'm actually surprised. I thought this would have been at least a little bit in favor of Dark Zero, but this poll has it at 50-50. M80 did beat Dark Zero within NA in a best of 1 that they played, but that was when Dark Zero was especially shaky. They were not very good for the first 4 games of NAL, and then they really bossed up. M80 was the higher seed, though, in playoffs as well. They made 2nd place, whereas Dark Zero placed 3rd, even though they didn't play each other in the playoffs. And then they didn't meet in Swiss either, but they both went 3-1. So pretty neck and neck. I guess M80 had the head-to-head, but I think there were a lot of reasons to pick Dark Zero. A more experienced team. These guys played SI together and the stage and now the major, whereas these guys didn't play SI together. They just formed for the stage and now this event. And I think more experience overall on Dark Zero as individuals as well, even though we do have a wealth of experience on M80, particularly Cameraman and Citizen. And then, yeah, the match is another 7-4, 7-5. We actually see maybe 3 of these in the top 8 in some order, either 7-5, 7-4, 7-4, 7-5. So funny how that works out, but it does. 7-4 on Cafe. So revenge for what M80 did to Dark Zero. It was a 7-4. It was on Skyscraper, different map, but still same scoreline in the immediate rematch, but then 7-5 on Chalet. So a couple of close maps, just like we saw between Secret and BDS, but Dark Zero, the better team, they advanced to the semifinals. I will say about M80, like a massive improvement on the previous iteration of the roster, who went like 1-3 at their first major and then 0-3 at the next major, and then got grouped at SI. So they went from, I think, like top 14 in Copenhagen, and then top 16 in Atlanta, and then top 20, aka last place, tied for last place at SI. So yeah, big improvement, getting top 8 here. And Nafe, actually the star of the show, really showing up in his homeland, tied with Bolo on kills though. And that does it for the quarterfinals. Now we have a couple of semis to talk about. We have Liquid up against Beast Coast, and Beast Coast, once again, not the favorites. I think more people had Liquid picked as the favorite for this one, but this is where I truly, really started to believe. I thought FaZe was going to beat them, I'll admit. I was rooting for them. I wanted them to win very badly, but FaZe was definitely the favorite in that matchup. And at this point, I started predicting Beast Coast. I thought they could do it. I believed in them, and I think I always did to an extent, even if the faith was a little bit more in the backseat. I always had these guys pegged as a roster that could do good things. But if you if you tell me that you thought this roster, when they first formed, would do what they did at this event, you're lying. Like, nobody actually thought that. Like, maybe you had hopes and dreams, but Anyways, yeah, we're still getting ahead of ourselves. Liquid getting 2-0'd by Beast Coast, and the dream dies once again for Liquid. Finally, they don't have many expectations, so I almost thought maybe there was a shot Liquid won it. Finally, when nobody's expecting them to win it, they do it, but not quite. They still make top 4, which is a lot better than you would have expected from them, given they started 0-4, looking like the worst team in Brazil, all the way through the LCQ in the upper bracket, and then faced a lot of adversity in Swiss, going down 0-2 at first, and then they clawed it back, and then they defeated Furia, reigning world champions, reigning major champions 2 times, and yeah, I think they outperformed expectations. It does suck to come short once again, but I think they can, keep their heads high after this major performance overall. 7-3, 7-5. So maybe I said that there might have been 3 of the 7-4, 7-5s. I might have been thinking this was a 7-4. Anyways, very, very similar though to the secret BDS scoreline and the M80 Dark Zero scoreline. And yeah, Skyscraper, Beast Coast, they're just really good. I mean, they go up 3 rounds. They go up 5-1, which is not a score that you can't come back from as the attackers on Skyscraper, but it's not good. You don't want to go down 5-1 no matter how good it is for the defenders or attackers or whatever. Beast Coast even make it 6-1. Liquid try to battle back. They get 2 rounds, but Beast Coast shuts the door. Gunner, big 1v3 clutch to close out the map. And then this is a close one, and I think Beast Coast actually had to make the comeback here, right? They win 3 rounds in a row. So they were down 4-5, and then, yeah, no overtime required. They just get the necessary 3 in a row, and it ends on another clutch, this time by Gaveni. And yeah, Diffuser actually the top rated player here. Gunner with a really nice clutch, Gaveni as well, but it is Diffuser taking the top slot. Always nice to see. He didn't have a great major up to this point, and maybe even after this point, but still very impressive rookie stage from this guy. I think the only other rookie stage that even rivals it is Spoit, and that's maybe a conversation to have another time. Spoit, I think, was a lot more instrumental in them doing what they did in EU and then going on to win the major. But some people have pointed out that Spoit was really, really enabled. Like, he was the absolute star of the team. They were trying to make sure he could do everything he can. And the meta maybe was a little bit different. Diffuser, I mean, he had to fend for himself a lot of the time, and other players were stepping into the spotlight. So anyways, let's move on. We got 2 more matches to talk about. BDS versus Dark Zero. Winner goes to the grand final to play against Beast Coast, and it's another 2-0. We see quite a few 2-0s, and this is a 7-4, 7-4, so not quite a 7-3, 7-5 or 7-4, 7-5, but still 8 rounds won by Dark Zero in a pretty clean 2-0. BDS looking quite good, just like we saw from Beast Coast on the other side of the bracket. And BDS, yeah, the pretty heavy favorites. I thought Dark Zero could maybe do this, but I did say that I thought that if BDS wins against Secret, they'll probably also win their semi. So it is what it is. Even if I predicted Dark Zero, that was me wanting NA to win. I guess I should have bet on a different NA team though. And yeah, in terms of the stats, Solotov goes pretty huge in this matchup, looking really good. Shaiko the second best. Likafat kind of struggling, maybe one of the only times he did struggle in this event. NJR the top dog for Dark Zero, as we see very, very often, and Nafe keeping pace, but unfortunately the other 3 players fell a little bit short. And now finally we have the grand final. I hope you guys were watching this. This was a hell of a match, and honestly, pretty much every grand final we have in Siege anymore is really good. I think every grand final match in a major since we come back from quarantine has been excellent. The Furia ones, formerly W7M at the time, a little bit less exciting because one of them was a 3-0, one was a 3-1, but I think those sort of make up for it in the storyline department, not for the match, but overall, because of the W7M ascendancy. And then in Copenhagen, they finally won after, everybody expected them to for a little while. And then they became the first back-to-back major champion. And then they capped it all off with the 6th invitational win that they couldn't quite get done the year before. So I think that storyline helped, even if it wasn't a 5-mapper in either major case. But I think every other major has been a 5-mapper. We saw when Team 1 won, when FaZe won, when Koi won, when BDS won, etc. They were all 5-mappers, and we have yet another 5-mapper picking up the legacy. This is the first time we've seen NA versus EU in a grand final in quite some time. I think the last time was TSM up against Empire in SI 2022 grand finals over 2 years ago. And this is also the first time we've seen EU or NA in a grand final in like a year, because the last 3 events have all been have all been Brazil versus Brazil, with W7M versus Liquid, Los, and then FaZe, and yeah, this is the first time we've had an NA champion in straight up 2 years since Dark Zero won Charlotte. So yeah, let's talk about what happened. Skyscraper goes to BDS. I think every map is sort of a scary map for BDS, but this has been generally a pretty solid map for Beast Coast. This is the one that they played against FaZe in Swiss, and they lost in round 15. They looked pretty good in regulation. They let it slip a little bit, and then once again in overtime. But I guess it's down here, right? Let's see what happened here, because it was a 3-3 for Beast Coast on their attack, which is pretty good. Getting 3 Skyscraper attacks is quite nice, and they're able to convert it into a win. They get 2-3 defenses in a row, and then BDS gets 1, but then Beast Coast closes it out. So pretty convincing 7-4. We go on to Consulate, and BDS sort of just smack them. This was the least close map of this entire series. Unfortunate that we didn't get to see any overtime. There wouldn't have been unlimited overtime regardless, because that just wasn't in the cards. That wasn't the rule set for this event, but now it's looking a little bit scary. Yes, it is 1-to-1 maps, but BDS carrying the momentum. We'll see if it's something that they can overcome. Beast Coast, once we're on to Chalet, they look pretty good again. They go up 5-2, but then 5 rounds in a row for BDS. It looks like a choke, and I don't know. Did you guys think that Beast Coast would come back for it? I know some people that were supporting Beast Coast were saying, "Oh, it's over, and I was nervous, but they continued on from there. So yeah, BDS 5 rounds in a row, really impressive. We go on to Cafe, which is BDS's map pick. So Skyscraper was a map pick for Beast Coast, and then Consulate was a map pick for BDS. So they each won their first map pick. And then Chalet was a Beast Coast map pick. So, they lost their second map pick, not great. But then they win on BDS's map pick. This is generally a map that BDS is very strong on, but they get the job done. And I just watched this map earlier, but there's so much information. They make a little bit of a run. Beast Coast is, or rather BDS is up 4-3, not a massive advantage. This has been a relatively even map, not one of the massively defender-sided ones, but still defender-sided. Although we've seen some cafes be quite attacker-sided in the past. But Beast Coast, they get a little bit of a streak of their own. They get 3 in a row. Now they're up 6-4. BDS gets around. Beast Coast closes it out once again before overtime, and then that sets us up for the very final map, Beast Coast against BDS. One map decides it all, and very exciting that it's on Border, an absolute brawl-heavy map. Comes down to so much gunplay, so much coordination, not so much the utility-focused sort of thing that we see on some other maps. It is just who's shooting better and or who is coordinating with their team better a lot of the time. And BDS gets the first round, and then Beast Coast, I think it was a kind of a narrow win, but they get the second round. They trade a few rounds. It's two rounds apiece. Beast Coast gets 1, and they get another. They're up 4-2, and you definitely want to be here. This has been close to even, but this was one of the attacker-sided maps coming into this part of the event, coming into the grand final. It was like 47% defender win rate or something. So I think 3-3 would have been sufficient, but 4-2, you're feeling really good. East Coast gets another round, they get another round. They're up 6-2 now. So they got past the 5-2 hurdle that they got stuck on in Chalet, and yeah, they're up 6-2. They just need to win 1 of the next 4 rounds. But then BDS gets a round, they get another round, they get another round. Now, Beast Coast is very close to not choking the map, but certainly choking their lead. If they lose this next round, they have to go to overtime. And yeah, losing 4 rounds in a row coming into overtime sounds like a mental choker, but they don't let it slip. They did let some rounds slip, but they don't let the match slip, the map. They win. NA finally has another champion, and Beast Coast, what a story. I mean, Hot and Cold dropped from SSG because they wanted Iconic, and Spirits dropped from M80, that was a little bit ago, because they wanted Spoit/Iconic. It's funny how two people on the roster sort of got dropped for Iconic, and then he was on Wildcard, and he didn't get dropped, but the whole roster sort of dissipated. And Gaveni dropped from Dark Zero because they wanted Bolo, and Gunner dropped from Sonics, maybe partially because they wanted Ambi, maybe partially because they wanted to drop him, whatever the case. And then they had Diffuser, who everybody was doubting. Nobody expected him to do anything big. They were like, this roster has a lot of promise, except for Diffuser. And Fettuccini, an extremely hardworking coach that I think a lot of people weren't taking seriously, and they make it happen. They win the whole thing. Incredible story, incredible matches, just crazy stuff. And Gunnar, the star of the show, the previous kill record was 57, held by Cyber for quite some time. He set it at the Sweden Major back in, what was that, like 2021 against Ninjas in Pajamas. And Cyber reached 56 up against Koi, so he was very close to matching or beating his own record. Pamazoo, I think, got 56 in Charlotte, but that record held for quite a long time. Now 2 players broke it, Likafak and Gunnar. And Gunnar had like a 5-kill lead coming into the final map, but Likafak quickly closed the gap after like 2 rounds, 3 rounds or something. They were neck and neck at like 55 kills. And then, yeah, Gunnar just took over. Incredible stuff from him. He was like super MVP on like 4 of the 5 maps, and Gaveni showed up big on 1 or 2, especially the last map. And then Spirits sort of struggling. He had a few moments on Cafe, which they did end up winning. And Diffuser and Hot and Cold were a little bit quiet, but certainly role players in their own regard. Likafak did everything he could, but everybody else on his team went negative. And this is the big thing that stands out. Shaiko, I think, he had like 1 decent map, but I think he went negative in 4 maps, which is just an absolute like incredible rarity for Shaiko. After map 3, Gunnar was on 39 kills and Shaiko was on 13. He was literally tripling his kills. And so many people were saying, oh, Shaiko disappears in the big matches. He's known for this, but like, I don't know. I think people are disrespecting Shaiko a little bit too much. Obviously, he had a dreadful match here, but I don't know, when else does Shaiko disappear? I don't know. I just think people are throwing a little bit too much shade on his name. Obviously, like this was, I mean, tougher for him than anyone watching, I'm sure. But yeah, just unfortunate. I'm sure he'll bounce back because he's one of the absolute best players to ever touch the game. But yeah, you just got to feel for Likafak putting in all this work only for just barely not enough backup. And Gunnar, I guess Likafak was even more positive on kills, but Gunnar just more raw kills, incredible entry stat line. He even had a 1vx, and yeah, I don't know what else there is to say about it. Gunnar easily the event MVP, and actually now that we're at the end, let's take a quick look at the stats. Let's not linger here too long, but yeah, Gunnar, highest rated player in the event. I think he was tied on rating with Ashen coming into the grand final, and then he even increased his rating. Not an easy thing to do in the highest stakes match. You know, in theory, the 2 best teams in the tournament playing each other. Usually your rating will decrease because of the level of competition, but no, he kept it up. Plus 54 in the event, plus 13 on entry. Most clutches tied with Bride. Incredible stuff. He played his debut stage as a rookie on Parabellum, and he was a monster. They didn't qualify for a major or anything, but just the raw number of kills he had and the entry stats he had were incredible. He went to Sonics, and it just feels like, especially now in hindsight, he just never fit into that roster, whether it was their style or the roles they put him on or whatever. But as soon as he's off the Sonics leash, he goes to Beast Coast, and almost no team wanted him. You know, Fett picked him up, and it just felt like a sort of last chance situation for him. And then he gets the most kills in any major final ever. He is the event MVP. He does, you know, more work than anyone on his team to make it happen. I even heard him giving the pre-match pep talk for his team. So, I mean, this guy did it all. He killed, he clutched, he brought up the spirits, he did everything. Like, great for him, great for Beast Coast. Congratulations. This was probably the most invested I've ever been in a match of Siege. I was streaming it, you know, a few people were watching. We were getting so hyped up. We were so nervous that they were going to choke it in that last match, but they pull it out. And huge congratulations to these guys. And it is phenomenal to see NA, after 2 years, end the drought. Let's see if we can keep it up. Yeah, just wow. What a day of Siege. What a match. What a, you know, what else can you say about it? I think that's going to do it for me. This ended up being, I mean, a lot longer than I anticipated, but I had to get out all those thoughts about the grand final because it was so incredible. Let me know your thoughts. Did you want BDS to win? Did you want Beast Coast to win? Were you heartbroken for Europe? Were you surprised that Brazilian dominance ended so abruptly? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below, and I will catch you guys next time.